I know you probably know who these chaps are. On bass, Dave Carpenter. On drums, Mr. Gary Novak. Thank you very, very much.
Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. You've been listening to the incomparable artistry of guitar legend Allan Holdsworth. That was from the soon-to-be-released Warsaw Summer Jazz Days '98, which is the second posthumous release from the Allan Holdsworth estate. Back on episode 128, Dan Perloff and I discussed the first posthumous release, Live in Japan, 1984. That one featured the audio from a television performance Allan did with drummer Chad Wackerman, bassist Jimmy Johnson, and vocalist Paul Williams. In addition to the audio CD, that release also included a DVD of the television performance. Similarly, this new release also includes both an audio CD and a DVD of the live performance. The key differences being that this performance occurred 14 years later, We just heard Allan introduce the personnel, which was Dave Carpenter on bass and Gary Novak on drums. There are no vocals this time around. It's strictly an instrumental presentation. And of course, another important difference is that this one was recorded in Poland, not Japan. Last time I was joined by Dan Perloff, who was credited as the producer of the album. This latest release is actually credited to 3 producers. In addition to Dan Perloff, there were 2 other key contributors who I'm quite happy to be welcoming to the show today to discuss their involvement with this project. First up, we have Greg Beaton, who's joining us on the Skype from Los Angeles, California. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Hi, Dan. Thanks so much for having me.
And also joining us all the way from Warsaw, Poland, we have Chris Narbut. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Well, before we start talking about your specific contributions to this new release and also your experiences with Allan and his music in more general terms, I wanted to start this out with a big shot of praise for the team over at Manifesto Records. I'm talking about not only Dan Perloff, of course, but also Evan Cohen, art director Lisa Sutton, D2 Mastering. These are the people who produced Allan's excellent career retrospective set, The Man Who Changed Guitar Forever. And these guys aren't messing around. I mean, the previous release came out December of 2018, and here a mere 7 months later, we already have a follow-up release. So they're setting a strong precedent. The bar is high. But the main thing I want to praise them for, and in the presence of my guests today, is a living example of this, is their openness to and their respect for the input of Allan's fans. You know, a lot of labels, they think they know what's best. They really don't want to hear from you. You know, they know what's going on and don't tell them what to do kind of attitude. And, you know, there's also labels, they just want to milk every last penny out of their artist, even if it means a sacrifice of quality. As they've proven, that's definitely not the case with Dan Perloff and his team. Clearly, they have great respect for Allan and for his fan base. And I can't imagine Allan's legacy being in better hands. So I just wanted to start out with that. Unfortunately, of the 3 musicians who appear on the album, 2 have since left us. Allan, of course, also the bass player, Dave Carpenter. Drummer Gary Novak contributed liner notes to this new release, and so did one of my guests today, who was not only heavily involved with the release of this material, but who was in fact present at the original event back in 1998. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and set the stage for us regarding the history of the Summer Jazz Days Festival, the social and political climate of Poland in the 90s, and how Allan came to be involved. I know that's a lot of stuff, but...
It sure is. Thank you very much, Dan. I'll try to navigate quite clearly about it. Let me start with this particular memory of mine that I think it was around 1997 when I started pushing really hard to finally have Allan play at Warsaw Summer Jazz Days Fest. Because, you know, guitar-wise, in the span of 1992 to 1997, we saw here in Warsaw the likes of Frank and Bally, Demiola, DeLucia, McLaughlin Trio, Birelli, Red Green, Blue Saraceno, Schofield, Frizzell, Abercrombie, even Buckethead. So, you know, how come Allan's European tours never made it to Warsaw? That was my basic thought back in the years. So we caught it up back in June of 1998. So Manifesto CD DVD you're holding now in your hand is quite a piece of history as well. For the 1998 Warsaw performance, Allan and the chaps, they had a really big-sized dressing room at their disposal in a historic Congress Hall, all outfitted with bathroom, full-blown furniture and mirror set and refrigerator with snacks and soda and nails. You know, I think Allan appreciated all that, and I could easily sense that he was like to have peace and quiet while preparing for the show. So I will tell you this: working with Al was a state of mind. That's my definition of that. So during preparation for sound check, as well as before taking the stage, I used to be around in case he needed any assistance. I remember him spotting the backline we provided him with, consisting of 2 Yamaha DG100 amps and 2 Marshall cabinets. And you know, he said he liked that except for vintage Celestion speakers in the Yamahas. I went a little bit mad, you know, but he said, I told him I was about to purchase a DG amp for myself, and he stressed you need to get a DG80 version equipped with a Celestion D12-100. Forget about the vintage. I loved watching him, you know, meticulously configuring his gear and carefully placing mics and making hundreds of their positions adjustments. And it was time consuming, but when Al finally fired up his engines consisting on lead and VGA tones mix, I was just unable to pick up my jaw from the floor. I have never, ever heard anything like that, either before or after the Warsaw show.
Yeah, well, you paint a vivid picture. I learned a little bit that the event had been going for maybe 6 years or so before Allan appeared. So was it a situation where each year, 93, 94, 95, 96, can we get him? Or was just 98 was just the magic year where all the stars lined up?
Yeah, back in 1998, I believe we had Sean Lane with Jonas Hellborg play for us, probably with Jeff Sipe on drums. I'm not quite positive about it. And now the top of the tops trio we had was the Sax Summit with Joe Lovano, Mike Brecker, and the third saxophonist was Steve Liebman, I believe. We were able to face the meeting of Al and Mike Brecker. You know, it was a really a historic meeting. They finally caught up with each other after years of probably not staying in touch. Mm-hmm. We just left them just in order to have a chat, and I believe that they both felt very, very happy they finally made it somehow in Warsaw.
Well, Allan famously said he wanted to play saxophone, and it doesn't get much better than Michael Brecker. Did you say Sean Lane also played at the 98 festival? Is that what you said?
Precisely.
Oh my God, Sean Lane and Allan Holdsworth at the same event. That's astounding.
Sean Lane lost his guitar. Actually, I believe it was one of the European airlines lost his old baggage, and he was left without his Leisure Excalibur. Am I right on this? He was probably playing VGA guitars back then. Yeah. And we asked him, what can we actually do for him? Because we didn't want to lose the show, of course. So he said, just give me an Epiphone Les Paul and it's fine. I thought he was literally kidding us, you know. But I just rest my case as soon as I heard him play an Epiphone Les Paul plugged directly into Marshall. I cannot recall what series of Marshall was that, but it was just absolutely awesome. Personally, I could not tell the difference between his tone using his original rig in comparison to what was his emergency rig on stage.
Yeah, he was just oozing with talent. But I love that confidence. Yeah, give me an Epiphone Les Paul, I can make it happen. It's like, you know, with other people who are so touchy and persnickety about their equipment. Well, turning over to Greg, I attended one of the Allan tribute concerts at the Baked Potato in L.A. You were there with a camera videotaping that, and then at the memorial event in Anaheim, you also were videotaping that, and you also provided some truly excellent video content that was projected on the big screen. That would include testimonials from Allan's various collaborators through the years. And that material is still available on YouTube. I highly recommend checking it out to any of Allan's fans who haven't seen it. But the key word there is video. So it's not surprising that you were the DVD producer for this set. Before we start commenting on the show itself, why don't you tell us exactly what you were working with and what your goals were for the DVD production-wise?
Chris will be able to enlighten us a little bit more on the full situation about obtaining the original recording on videotape. And from what my understanding is that Manning Bartlett, who's one of the moderators of the Unreal Allan Holdsworth fan page on Facebook, reached out to Chris about a year ago. Chris, is a little bit over a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
And they started a dialogue about, could we find some way to get this original recording, best quality source possible, to be able to release this as an album and potentially as a DVD as well, as has been done with the first release by Manifest, the first posthumous release. And Chris was able to, and he'll enlighten us on this, how he did it, but he was able to find one remaining copy on Digibeta and share that information with us. And we were, to say the least, ecstatic to find out that a Digibeta copy of that original broadcast of the concert was found. And then subsequently he was able to have it transferred to digital file format that we then copied over here to LA, and I was able to work with that file and put it on DVD. And my goals essentially were to preserve the original recording and format as much as possible and change as little as possible, while subtly enhancing the quality and the sound to have the best viewing and listening experience. So that's basically what we did.
And the DVD includes 8 songs sort of officially, but then you've classified another 6 as bonus footage.
That's right. So what's happened is, I believe, and Chris can elaborate a little bit more on this, the broadcast version was edited to time for a particular broadcast chunk of time, you know what I mean? And there actually is a typo, unfortunately. We apologize on the first and maybe second pressings of the CD-DVD combo. Track number 8 on the DVD, there's technically 7 tracks, or there are technically 7 tracks on the DVD. And Protocosmos, you'll see, is also listed in the bonus footage. So the DVD, the main tracks, those 7 tracks, have the highest quality transferred from that digibeta that Chris found. That is what you'll see on the DVD, a much clearer version of what we've seen floating around on the internet for years and years. Mm-hmm. The bonus footage is essentially a series of songs that didn't make the cut for the broadcast edit. Right. So those unfortunately were not on the digibeta, and I had to kind of dig around and do a little bit of digital sleuthing and see if I could find the best quality versions of those songs that existed, essentially before they hit YouTube. Like, the versions on YouTube are obviously compressed because they've been on YouTube, and there's even more video compression that lowers the quality when that happens. So basically what we've got here in the bonus footage, 2 Allan Holdsworth mega fans who are also good friends of mine, German Ezekiel Sanchez and Mike Coughlin. Mike actually lives in town here. They both had access to files that are related to bootlegs of some former concerts, including this one. And I was able to kind of procure the best looking version off of DVD I could for this bonus footage. I basically wanted to have the DVD contain every bit of what was recorded in the best quality possible for the main DVD version. And then, the full experience is to also have that bonus footage. So I just didn't want to leave any stone unturned.
Well, I'm glad you explained that, and it's also good that it is sort of spelled out on the packaging, so people don't go, oh, they notice a drop in quality and wonder what happened. It's like, it's literally bonus. It's like,
exactly.
If you want if you're the completist, that's great. Here it is. If it's below your standards, well, fine. We still gave you the other best stuff. And then, Greg set you up there. I mean, please don't tell us you found that for $1 at a yard sale or something. I mean,
you bet I did. I think it's worth mentioning that the whole thing we're discussing today did not start as a release project. Initially, it was meant to be a contribution to the Allan Holdsworth documentary, right?
That's exactly
Because Manning and yourself, you were searching for legitimate resources of some quality footage that would fit the documentary concept. That's what you basically said before, but let me just put it straight, okay? So for the Warsaw show, filmed by a state TV, it required some, time-consuming looking into the matter, sending emails, making numerous phone calls, arranging meetings, reaching for key people, and whatnot. So as I still had some connections and access to the Polish state TV resources, I just declared you both to give it a go. It was nothing more. So the first thing I did was I asked the broadcast company for doing archives database query, investigating any and all media carriers containing Allan's Warsaw 98 performance. And there was a particular person mentioned in the credits, Anna Rajewska. She provided me a great deal of assistance. She called me back saying there were 8 digibeta cassettes waiting for me to give them a quality check or run through. Can you remember that, Greg?
Yeah,
I said, wow,
I do.
8 digibetas, So I immediately sent Manning and Greg the news, and we went totally ecstatic about it. However, when I put my hands on the cassettes, it turned out that they contained the complete 98 TV footage, not just Allan's performance. What was more, it actually became clear to me that what I expected to be the original unabridged 64-plus minute live broadcast, shot and aired on June 19th, 98, actually turned out to be just a 44-minute edit, Greg just mentioned, the TV used for a later rebroadcast in September 98. But the quality was excellent, and I was really impressed.
And to add what Chris is saying, boy, Manning and I both received a video from Chris when he first started reviewing the first tape that he found that had this concert on it. And we were ecstatic. Chris is absolutely right about that. It was mind-blowing to see this concert found on a production digitape from 1998. It was incredible. We were very, 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 very happy.
I'll bet. And as I mentioned when Dan Perloff was here, Allan's approach to both soloing and chord formations was so unique and original that in his case, watching him play can be just as mind-boggling, as hearing him play.
That's right. And that's actually, that brings up a great point too. Chris and I talked back and forth many, many, many times while we were preparing the DVD. And I ran a couple ideas by him. There essentially were different ways to even convert, just as simple as the process of converting the frame rate of the European HD format, which is 25 frames a second, to the American, which is either 24 if it's on DVD or digital file, or 30. Even in that process, I wanted to ensure that we had the greatest amount of clarity we could, because as Holdsworth alumnus and keyboardist extraordinaire Steve Hunt said, Allan's fans know what he had for breakfast. I mean, they know everything about him. So I figured they want to know everything about him. So I try to get the sharpest image possible. And we end up going with an algorithm that basically just repeated every fifth frame instead of doing any frame blending, which would have kind of blurred and obscured the footage a little bit. And when you're getting those really nice tight shots, and I got to say, they look like they're HD. It's really incredible.
Yeah, and when the Japan thing came out with the music and the concert, I thought, well, what's the second release going to be? And it's comparable. I mean, it's a great CD, it's a great DVD. It's a different time frame, a different lineup. One thing that's the same, though, is that pinky finger stretching 5 frets above the rest of his hand.
Yeah.
Every time I see Allan play, there's the speed, there's the uniqueness, but he makes a chord, and then that pinky finger shoots out like 7 more frets, it looks like.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy.
But I have to say, I've seen different performances. And one thing about this particular DVD that I find interesting actually has nothing to do with the music. It's the journey of the glasses. I'm
glad you appreciate that.
At the start of the show, Allan is not wearing any glasses. Then about midway through, he's wearing glasses, but they're over his forehead. They're not over his eyes. Then finally, towards the end, they're over his eyes. And interestingly, if you look at the, which everybody will when they get this, the CD artwork, it captures that second phase. It's got him with the glasses on over his forehead. And I just thought it was funny because I'd never really seen either version of that before, and I'd never seen it sort of gradually happen during his show. So it's sort of a sidebar. But, I thought that was...
You know what he used to say about it? Age sucks. Yeah, that was his comment.
We also need to give a little bit of attention to Dave Carpenter and Gary Novak. And Dave Carpenter said, wow, he was surprised he got offered a chance to work with Allan. Well, when you hear Dave Carpenter play, it's not that surprising. I mean,
he's phenomenal. He's phenomenal all over this album. It's unbelievable.
He is. He's incredible. And, he's playing a 6-string electric bass in the concert. And, of course, he's mainly known for playing upright acoustic.
Chris, can you remind me of exactly how the recording itself, the audio recording, was preserved? Because I just want to say for a moment that Chris also had archived the best quality mix down of this concert.
Let's just put it this way. Someone under an influence of a prophetic vision saved and kept a direct from the main board mixdown, which was remastered for manifesto released by Dave Schultz and Bill England, and did an amazing job.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, they did.
And I know that Allan would have been happy that D2 Mastering is doing these posthumous releases because, of course, they did his box set. He told them himself personally how happy he was with the work they did. And Dave Carpenter, also Gary Novak, listen to his playing, the track we heard at the beginning and all throughout. Gary's on the top of his game. You can't be on stage with people like Dave Carpenter and Allan Holdsworth. It's like when an actor is working with really top actors that you rise to the level. And Gary certainly did that. But Chris, you mentioned he was suffering some golf injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as I can recall, you can probably see in the very first alternate videotape, the first video track and a bonus footage. Watching this pretty closely, you can see Gary wearing a sort of elastic band on his right arm. When he was telling me the story, he said that he somehow twisted his arms while hitting the golf ball. So he earned a sore left wrist and probably stretched one of his muscles in his right arm. And he was really mad about it, because it was like 100% sure he's not gonna make it. He would not gonna make it that evening, and it turned out something totally different, because he played so cool left hand push pull snare rolls just with his left hand that I just then Googled, and he was perfect that evening.
Well, that was the key, play hurt, you play better. I don't know if that's true, but it's funny because that's one of the benefits of liner notes, and one of the benefits of doing this interview like we're doing. You get those little insights, because when I first watched it, I wasn't thinking that way at all. You just assume everybody's good to go. Somebody might have the flu, somebody might have arthritis in their knee, you don't know. But because you did know, and because you mentioned it, now everybody can look for that and experience it on a deeper level. Well, interestingly, in terms of the material in this show, 4 of the 9 tracks on the album, which is nearly half the performance, were from Allan's 16 Men of Tain album. And the reason that's so interesting is, remember, this was 1998, and not only was that album not released until 2000, it wasn't even recorded until 1999. So this was previously unreleased material, half the show was built on. And another thing, of course, I noticed was, while Allan doesn't play the infamous syntax, he does utilize some guitar synth, which might explain the glasses, depending on the size of the readout. But and what I like about the guitar synth and his usage of it, it's relatively subtle. You can tell the sound is being affected, and there's some kind of effect going on, but it still sounds like a guitar. It doesn't sound like a keyboard. And considering this is an all-instrumental presentation, it's probably a good thing to be able to, turn to some different sonic textures.
Allan probably used a lot of VGA during studio sessions for the 16 Men of Tain. Mm-hmm. Some part of his clear tones was just the courtesy of the VGAs.
Yeah. And, of course, you were there live at the show, so how was it sounding to you live?
Well, as I told before, I was just unable to pick up my jaw from the floor, The first thing that struck me is, damn, I'm not familiar with the tunes,
Yeah.
what the hell are playing? I expected some tunes from the IUU period and from the Hardhead area albums, and from one hand it was like, it sure does sound great, but it's not necessarily what I wanted to hear, But after, as I started digging and submerged more and more into their music, it was just like, this is an Nirvana,
Nice.
The right man in the right time, in the right place. So these are really rare things, and we somehow managed to capture lightning in a bottle.
You really did. It's an incredible recording. My goodness.